Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste. Thank you for joining us for today's knowledge sharing session. My name is Tejasri, and I will be hosting today's session, which is about Kathak, one of the 8 Indian classical dances. Before we begin the session, I would like to inform the audience that we will be following a question and answer format with our esteemed guest. And time permitting, we will take up audience questions. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our special guest who has joined us live from Vienna, a guest who has left an indelible mark as a performer, choreographer, guru, researcher, organizer, and author. We are thrilled to have with us Padma Shri Guru Shobhna Narayan, a multifaceted personality whose name is synonymous with the grace and beauty of Kathak. She is the recipient of over 39 national and international awards. She has been conferred Doctor of Literature, holds 2 MPhil degrees in Defense and Strategic Studies and Social Sciences, and also holds a master's degree in Physics. Her career spans for over 5 glorious decades with performances both in Indian and international festivals before heads of states and governments. She is an accomplished author, and her intensive research has led to the discovery of 16 Kathak villages situated in eastern UP and Bihar. Characterized by her quiet dignity and elegance, Padma Shri Guru Shobhna Narayan is a role model for young girls across the nation who aspire to follow her footsteps. We are indeed honored to have you with us today to share your snippets from your journey, Shobhna ji. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tejasri. Thank you.
I am certain that the audience does not want to listen to me talking anymore. So let me begin by asking you, how did your journey with Kathak begin? Was it something you were always interested in, or like people say, it just happened?
Well, I don't think it just happened. Actually, it began when I was barely 2.5 years old. My mother can't remember what age I was. She said 2.5, she said 3, and she kept on doing this. so, uh, if it was in Delhi, I would have shown you my first lehenga, so you could have seen my size at that time. Um, she said that when I was a child, like all children, we have excessive energy. And I would keep doing something and saying, "Ab main kya karun?" She said, "I was so tired with your ab main kya karun?" She said, "Nacho," and literally and figuratively. So then she took me to. I was born in Calcutta. My father was posted there. So Shadhana Bose was the famous dancer actress of that time, and she's a very good dancer. And so she took me to Shadhana ji. And later on, Shadhana ji told me, when I met her many years later, when I had grown up, I was in my teens, I went back to Calcutta to meet her. She said, when your mother brought you to me, you were so tiny, I was aghast. And I told her in Bengali, you brought to me a babe in arms. She said, Kole bacha nahi escho. Matlab, you brought to me a babe in arms. So, but soon, that babe in arms became, I believe, according to her, her favorite, because others would leave and I would keep standing over there and saying, I want to dance more. I never smiled, by the way, in those days. So if you see the photographs of childhood, always like this, very intense expression. And then, so that's how my journey in Kathak started. And then and since then, it was like, fish finding its life in water. I found my life in Kathak. And it's never left me, and I've always been with it. And I hope it'll continue till my last dying breath.
Absolutely. We hope so too, and we hope to see you performing someday when things are back to normal. But you
Yes.
mentioned in your conversation that you were very young when you started Kathak and probably 2.5, 3 years old. And you have done extensive research on it in later years. I cannot think of a better person who can tell us about Kathak, where it originated from, what are the different, how it has evolved over the years and what sets it apart.
First of all, when I was growing up, there were all kinds of articles. And those articles suddenly, and I think the popular cinema contributed to a lot of misinformation and disinformation about Kathak. So, unfortunately, so. And but the question within me was that why the name Kathak? Why the name Kathak? And that question kept on resonating with me until I read a book, and where one American scholar has mentioned that it's mentioned in the Mahabharata. I was saying, oh, wonderful. At that time, I had not read the Mahabharata. I mean, there were Gita, I knew it because my mother would sing the Gita for me. But I had not read the Mahabharata. I had not read, Mahabharata, I knew the story, but not read it. So I took the shortcut. There was a Bhandarkar's Oriental Research Institute at Pune, Sanskrit. So I wrote to them. There used to be in the old days, in the 50s and all that, 60s, uh, a blue inland letter. So in that 10 paise ka. So then I wrote on that, handwritten, sent it to them. And then thinking, of course, I never expected an answer. That they're going to throw it into the dustbin. God knows which girl has written all this. Lo and behold, 3-4 months later, I get an answer, typed written. Mine was handwritten, typed written, saying, yes, it is there in the Mahabharata. And they gave me the shloks. I sort of jumped up. And then that also led to the interest, of reading the Mahabharata and seeing the shlok. I've got that is probably I did the physics, later on, that I want to see the origin. And that's also what my mother said, go into the origin, depth of it. And now the Kathaks were the community. The community called Kathak who told stories through the medium of gesticulation and mime. Now that's important. Gesticulation and mime, which is dance. So and Mahabharata, I'm not going to say when it was written. I don't get into that controversy. But in the Adi Parv, it is Kathaka Shapare Rajan Shavnashya Vanaukasa Divya Kyanani Ye Chapi Pathanti Madhram Duja. Now here it is. So later on, one young research scholar found an inscription buried in the archives of Mithila University, Kameshwar archives. And this is from the Maurya period, because then I sent it to two epigraphists, and one from the ASI and one, this gentleman was there. And they have dated it. The dating is all BC, before Christ. So it goes from 1st century BC to 4th century BC. Now these are the period of dating, difference of about 200-300 years. So now if it is, but roughly around early Maurya period or late Maurya period, 2nd century BC. So 3rd century BC, 4th century BC. Now it says, Gangaye Mahanadiye Tate, Sabvo Kathaka. Now all the Kathaks, Bingar Natenam, that is the Shringar Nritya, they're done in a very graceful manner. Stuti Tisi Kaim, what were they doing? Dancing a devotional stuti. Ehi Raya Adinaho Bhavenam Pase, which pleased Lord Adina. Now, here was another thing which actually said that the Kathaks were dancing. So till then, they were known as the dance of the Kathaks. It was not Kathak dance that was, they say, the dance of the Kathaks. And later on, of course, the whole thing developed as, we know it as Kathak dance, But even today, it is a living tradition, incidentally. We stage walas, our performances are very different. But even today in the temples, the original Kathaks are still dancing and narrating stories. I've gone and seen them with my own eyes. I've visited 8 temples and I've seen about 5-6 of them.
Amazing. But how has it evolved over the years? I mean, since you started to where we are now, I mean, in terms of the music that accompanies it, or the costumes that are worn with it, how has it progressed? Did it see a time where Kathak was actually on the verge of not being practiced as an art form to has it come back to a point where people are
For example, but that was the case with all dance forms.
Hmm.
All dance forms had, the Kathaks were only done, by the way, by the Brahmin community and in the temples. There was a version, the dancers who wanted to learn from these people learned and did it in public. For example, in that area, that Mithila region, etc., um, you had skilled solo dancers like Amrapali, who's well known.
Yeah.
Shalvati, who's well known. I mean, they were rivals, one from Vaishali, one from Magad. So, but they were soloists. So, soloists and skilled dancers, which means some kind of a classical dance form. They were not doing folk dance. They were, so it was skilled dance. So, these people. So, now how do you know that what it is the movement? You don't have any sculptures. All the standing temples are millennium old, but you had sculptures earlier also. Maurya, now after the Indus Valley civilization, the only sculpture you get are from Maurya period. And the beauty about the Mauryan period sculptures are that they are three-dimensional, 360 degrees. The later sculptures, Gupta period and all are friezes, they are panels. So you don't know what it behind is. So here you can make out the movement. Now, if you see the Maurya period sculptures and then the Gupta period sculptures and later on, Maurya period are three-dimensional. You'll see that the bhangis, the position, the bhangis, the pirouette was there. If I mean later on, if you want, I can show you, and even the costumes, that the two costumes we Kathaks have, were there in the Maurya period, including the churidar kurta. It was there in the Gupta period, including the churidar kurta. It is not medieval period. So you see that there is a continuity in stance and pose throughout. So that the Atma has continued, the continuity in stance and pose, the padding may have changed, the external paddings. How it was presented at that time, we do not know. But what if I have to if I have to now extrapolate from the Natya Shastra and from the Abhinay Darpan and, and all these texts, then later on the Sangeet Ratnakar, if I start extrapolating, now Natya Shastra does not talk about one dance form alone. It is like a PhD thesis. It is seeing and dissecting and codifying it. So it is a codification of movement. Now, and if I read the Abhinay Darpan, now look at the way the Kathaks wear the ghungroos. Exactly the same thing has been codified in Abhinay Darpan. No one else wears ghungroos like that except the Kathaks. And this was written then. So obviously they must have seen for it to have codified it. So it was happening then. Look at the pirouettes. So even the classification of pirouettes, out of the 7 classified pirouettes, the Kathaks are doing at least 5 of them. So now something was existing at that time. If you see all the bhangis, etc., it was existing at that time. So you don't never see Kathak has been living, transformed, living as it was then. And you see that exact pose, and then you see its reflection in the Natya Shastra and in the Abhinay Darpan and Sangeet Ratnakar. There's a discussion on the footwork in Sangeet Ratnakar. Those footwork, only the Kathaks do it. So you see that, so you see how the form and stance and everything has remained the same. The padding and the way has would keep changing with ages. Now, as far as the performers are concerned also, earlier, as I said, even today, the traditional Kathaks from UP are all Brahmins. And they are still dancing in the temples. Unfortunately, however we may say, we don't believe in casteism, it is against everything. But in actual social life, in this thing, people do, I mean, even in marriages, they look at kaun sa kunba, kaun sa caste, etc., etc. So now, so they still have. Now, it is, but there were always other dancers, community also dancing. Now they had learned from the Kathaks. In fact, one of the important thing is that people who learned from it then were not supposed to be called Kathak dancers. Those were the original ones are the Kathaks, but the others are nuts and nutties. I, and I was, this was reinforced even in my research till 2 years ago, even then, when you go there. Now they said anybody. So, but now of course everybody, we are all Kathak dancers. But now that demarcation and discrimination is not there. But in the eyes of the traditionalists, yes, there is a demarcating line. So now, so that is now as far as it that now where the popular, when you said it had disappeared, all dance forms had disappeared from, when you say disappeared, what does it mean? It means that people from good families, from upper families, and from different were not taking it to dance. Now that was in north, south, east, west. The Devadasis in south were also on the fringes of society. So their dance was called Dasiyattam, not Bharatnatyam. Bharatnatyam is a new name given in the 30s. The present Bharatnatyam form is a kind of a different, yes, exactly, renovated form, let me say, of the original Dasiyattam. So along with the name. And that was largely, so why Rukmini Devi Arundel was the first lady from a good family, educated family, upper caste, who came into dance. Till then, no. I've met so many of the old timers, they said, music we were allowed to learn in different parts of the country. Those 90-year-old ladies and 80-year-old, but dance, strict no, no, no. But Rukmini Devi Arundel opened the portals in southern India in the 30s. In eastern India, the Tagore family opened the portals 20, 30 years prior to Rukmini ji. And so by the end of the 1800 and something, when the Renaissance was taking place, social Renaissance was taking place, girls from good families were coming out. Why? What about education? Girls never went out into colleges, etc. जो पढ़ाई होती थी घर में होती थी, so but never to, but they started going out. So even those girls who went out into to colleges were considered forward in those days. So along with that, so then all the girls from the good family started coming out, when the social reformation started, and so then it started becoming part of the other the normal life. And so now today you see it, so this has happened in all dance forms, not only in Kathak.
Correct. I'm going to talk about, you spoke about how you've seen over the years, practically Kathak, whatever the essence of it has remained the same. There are only minor changes that have happened over the years to kind of adapt it to the global stage, is what I understand. So
that happened with all dance forms.
Exactly. Yeah, all dance forms. But let us talk about the gharanas. It's not just with Kathak, even with music, there are different kinds of gharanas. How many gharanas does Kathak have? And how did these gharanas originate? Could you probably demonstrate a few peculiarities of each?
Sure. First of all, the word gharana. What is the root word? Ghar. Ghar means mere ghar ki cheez hai. So that means there's an individuality. Now, you suppose your name is Tejashri. Okay, Tejashri has a certain way of cooking a certain dish. It is a same, and then somebody in another family, the same dish is cooked with a slightly different flavor. In another family, slightly different. So you'll say ये हमारे घराने की चीज है. Now your generation, succeeding generation will learn that and say ये हमारे घर की चीज है, मतलब घरानेदार है. The other one will say, the succeeding generations will learn that and say ये हमारा घराने का है. And the other one will say, so that is how the word gharana, say schools of thought. A product of a certain university will give a different look, an approach to life, and a product of another university or this thing would, so you can make out that subtle differences. The teachings are the same, but it's how you do it. It is the same tathei theitat, same tathei tatathe, same dhettams, same dagadaga thuntakatho, the same thing, the same kanha to se nahi bole, or the same kavets, wahi the same Krishna, wahi the same Shiva Tandav, wahi the same, but how it is executed, therein lies the difference. So, for example, now, so today we have in Qatar, gharanas or schools must have existed even in previous centuries, but they come and they go. These are changing traditions. Tradition is a tradition for some time and then it keeps changing. So that is why something is never constant. It just keeps changing. The basic ethos remains the same, but everything keeps changing over a period of time. And so now it's so we have Lucknow Gharana. Now it was actually, to tell you also about gharanas, you said how did it come about? In 1895, a certain Madho Singh, ruler, bordering Rajasthan and Delhi part, that UP Delhi part. So he UP and Delhi, UP and Rajasthan. So that Madho Singh, he called all the well-known Kathaks of that time in 1895, and each one was performing, and they had a different flavor because they had evolved in their own scenario. And so where they came from, where they were actually living, so he started saying, okay, let's put it in that name. So it became Lucknow Gharana, Jaipur Gharana, and Banaras Gharana. And in Raigad, Chhattisgarh, in Raigad, Maharaja himself, Chakradhar Singh, was a great connoisseur of art. So then the youngest of the lot is the Raigad Gharana. He created the Raigad Gharana because he had a different approach to it. He said even all the Nritta bowls, the pure Nritta bowl is not simply Nritta. They also speak. So he called it the Bagula Paran, the Bijli Badal Bijli Paran, and things like that. So everything he said also speaks. So he had that mentality. So that is the hallmark of the Raigad Gharana, that everything speaks. For example, I'll just say something. If I say Harihar Paran, now what does the word Harihar mean? Harihar is that Hari bhi hai और हर भी है, मतलब विष्णु भी है, शिव भी है. And now if I'm saying this bowl out, and it's pure nritta bowl, pure nritta. It says now look at me. I do it so often. Dha 1 2 3 dha takita dha takita gina kata gina kata gina kata dha takita gina kata gina kata gina dimaka 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 dim dim kadati tikadati tikadati dha ne tita dimaka 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 dim dim kadati tikadati tikadati dha ne tita dimaka dimaka dim kadati tikadati dha ne tita. Now, so how it goes? It's similarly, the same thing was adopted later on by other gharanas. So this is of course adopted by later gharanas, but they have other. So similarly, you have dha tit da da tit da da tit kir dha tit ditta kita dikita dha ditta. Now jhula hai. It is like a swing, and the jatis are changing. It is Tishra Jati of Bol. Dha tit, dha dha tit, dha dha tit, kir dha tit, dita kada dhikit, dha din ta dha, kir dha din ta tak dha din, takit dhikit, dhagina, tit kata takit dhikit, dhagit dhikit, takit 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 dhikit dha nida, tak dhikit dhagit dhikit, takit 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 dhikit dha nida, takit dhikit dhagit dhikit, takit 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 dhikit dha nida tar dha kat dha nida nida tar dha kat dha nida nida tar dha kat dha nida nida. Now this is the झूलना पर, झूला की तरह है. And what is it? बादल बिजली आ गए. And you're dancing in the rain. Now, so Lucknow Gharana, that same dhata kathunga, or they would execute it with a certain grace. There's a different kind of a grace. There is Shringar, that is more Shringar mein. And in Jaipur Gharana, it would be more Veerras way, that way. The same thing, Dhada Kathunga. Then in Banaras Gharana, there's a kind of a rawness, there's a power of rawness, that it is, so that is the way they would do. They take a lot of, even the spinning, that on one leg, cut. They will do a lot. Then there are few movements which are most peculiar to Gharanas. A chakra Brahmari by Lucknow Gharana would be done with the hands opening out like this. And in the Jaipur Gharana, they would do it with a Garud Brahmari like this. So this is the Garud Mudra. So they would always. And Banaras would does both. They do either of the two, so does then even in the Brahmari, that kind of hopping, going on one foot, tuck, tuck, like da, 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 like that's more used to be seen in the, like Shiv ke dabru ko lekar ke, ya Durga, with the skull of this thing. More in Banaras Gharana, but that you don't see much over here. Another thing, tram thay thay, da thay thay, da thay. This is one which is called, there's a Karana also on the Natya Shastra. So this Karana, that is done more prevalent. You'll see it more obvious and used in the Jaipur Karana. So you have these little subtleties, But otherwise, the language is the same. The content is the same. Like in all classical dance forms of India, content is the same. We all do all the mythological stories. Krishna, Shiva, Vishnu, this, that, everything is the same. Even the entire gestures are the same. It's how you utilize it, how you demonstrate it. That's the flavor differs, and how you treat the body, waist downwards differs. So all the different dance forms come about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those beautiful performance. I mean, I'm privy to it. Now, moving on from the Gharanas, over the years, you've performed in so many different places, so many different countries. I'm sure you've also collaborated with, renowned artists or artists with repute representing different dance forms from across the globe. Do you think that there are certain nuances that tie all these dances together? Or do you think each of them are different or they evolve from the same place?
No. Wait. Let me ask you. Darling, may I ask a question? What is common between a girl from India, a girl from Europe, a girl from Africa, or girl from China? What's common? They all are the same. They all have the same 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth, 2 arms, 2 feet, hair, etc. It's just the finer distinctions, of how they bone structure will be just a little. So dear old God made that little bit of difference in the bone structures, etc. And that's the difference. But otherwise, nothing else is different. So now the mannerisms come in, how it is. So somebody would be more soft and gentle. Somebody would be a little like this. Somebody would be somewhere, so the attitude differs. The
Yeah.
manner of presentation differs. The manner of speaking differs. So that's exactly the same. Even as far as music is concerned, same seven swaras and with all the quarter tones, semitones, 12 of them. Now, but how you treat it? You get so many different. We have the raga system and they have the symphony system. So, so similarly in movement, exactly. What about emotions? See, if you and I will meet somebody from another country where I don't know the language. How do we talk to each other? Only through the language of gestures and emotions, because it's the same. He will understand whether I'm angry or I'm smiling. You know, so the language of emotions and gestures are universal. In some context, it might be culture specific, but otherwise it's universal. So similarly, when I was doing it first with the Spanish flamenco, the first ever India's duet with Spanish flamenco, I did it in 1989, 88, 89. And then, of course, much later, now everybody's doing it. And similarly, the first triad also I did, with the Western classical ballet duet was first done in the early 80s. And then, of course, then the first ever triad, flamenco, Kathak, and Western classical ballet. That was also done in 1992, then 94 in India. And so now what happened? Now, may I just get up to demonstrate a
Yes,
bit?
please, please. I think you've all been waiting for it.
Okay, let me remove my. Okay. Sorry, the carpets are there all over. Now, uh, yeah, if I'm in Kathak, you'll probably see all of us doing something, and doing this. Now, this as a sound. Now a ballet would also do that, a ballet dancer, but the ballet dancer would go like that. I mean, I'm sorry, I cannot lift myself up like that. But just think I'm flying, that way, but they will also do that. A Spanish flamenco also does it, but he gives it an emphasis. Similarly, this movement. All of us in Indian classical dance forms, we know this movement very well. Now, a ballet also does it, but it's like this, more ethereal, more anti-gravity. A Spanish flamenco does it, tuck. Similarly, this movement. A Kathak will say this, and go like that. A ballet does it like that, and with it so anti-gravity, that feeling of, and a Spanish flamenco does it this. Now, the same movement, but how is it? The approach, the attitude makes all the difference. It just makes all the difference because that's where the flavor changes. And therefore, once the flavor changes, how you treat the body also changes the music, the tempo. So everything is interconnected. So we found so many points of similarities. Obvious dissimilarities are there, but there were so many points of similarity. So everything complemented. Everybody was true to their style. We found. Now, in Kathak, we have a lot of footwork. Spanish flamenco has it. So again, when later on, when I also did it with a tap dancer, we had it. But we speak with our feet. They speak in a different manner. We speak in a different manner. We are even emoting with our feet. A whisper is also emoted with the feet. A crawl is also emoted with the feet. A fury is also emoted with the feet. It's just not stamping. But they have a different way. We have a different way. We do it with our feet, sound of the feet and the ghungroos. They do it with sound of the boots, the kind of this thing. So, so things like, so there are so many points of similarities. Obvious dissimilarities are there. And similarly, when we first did it with our Indian counterparts, after all, we have 8 classical dance styles. The points of similarities, we always work on the points of similarity. Obvious dissimilarities are there because each one has its own flavor. Yeah.
Such a beautiful way that you showed it to us how each dance is connected in some way or the other. Now, I'm going to take you back to the point that earlier during the conversation where we were talking about, the origins of Kathak and how it came about. And you said something about Bollywood was spreading a lot of misinformation at one point of time. So I'm going to pick on that point, and I want to understand the contemporary dance culture. Do you think it has in some way, or do you feel that it has in some way undermined the traditional art forms and sort of alienated the younger generation from it?
I would say so because you see what is happening, and there the role of the media also plays a very large role.
Yeah.
Today, in earlier times, the newspapers would have a proper discussion, a page devoted to theater, music, and dance. And there would be reviews and there would be discussions, there would be good critiques. Where is it today? Except for barring 1 or 2 newspapers, I can name it. One is a Hindu, and one is maybe one somebody else, But otherwise, all other newspapers, national newspapers, don't have it. So what do they have? They are only promoting Bollywood. They are only promoting Tollywood or Mollywood or whatever wood, whichever wood you may go into, but popular arts. So what are the, and that is what is, you're seeing it also in the electronic media. Where is it? Who watches? But earlier used to have set out timings and said. So when it is not there in this psyche, it's not the children's fault because that is what you're feeding them with. And therefore, that is also playing on the mind. So and largely what it is a kind of a hybrid of anything, everything, and a potpourri of a lot of uh, the trashy Western thing. I would say when you talk of Western music, for them, Western music means the pop culture.
Right.
How many of them know actual classical Western music? Nobody. Rarely you'll there is a Bach, there's a Beethoven. What about the symphonies? What about the sonatas? Who is Vivaldi? What was this? What They don't know anything about the classical Western music culture. For them, it is only the pop culture. So that is what they think it's Western music. So similarly, we are now presenting an image that everything for the Western and largely for the, sorry to say, the Indian diaspora, because the Indian diaspora now all over and in good numbers, very good numbers all over. And so they are the ones who are also promoting the popular culture. So there's no discussion. So I think somewhere we all have to look into within ourselves. I know profit is, we have to make profit, but profit also, it is like raising your child. A child would like to eat different kind of meals, but perhaps they might not be the most healthiest of meal for the nourishment of the body. Now here also, for the nourishment of the personality of the person, the mental, psychological, and ethical personality of the person, we also need to think that what is required. Why is it that in our Indian culture, I'm now asking a counter question. Why is it that in our Indian culture, all our Devis and Devatas have been made out to be serious artists. We look upon them as artists also. You don't have it in any other philosophy. Shiva is also seen as Nataraj, as Nateshwar, as Natakeshwar. The moment you think of Krishna, how many of them would think of him as Dwarkadhish Krishna? The first imagery is that of the artist Krishna. Why is it that in a temple of learning, we'll always have a Saraswati? And Saraswati has a veena in her hands. I think we need to reflect upon all this. And these were not popular arts. They are longer lasting, which means classical art. So there are so many indicators in our philosophy, but which we choose to ignore.
That is true. That is indeed true. I think, like you said, the media does play a huge role in
and then we parents at home also. Because we parents, we are after all bringing up the first learning place is home. So I think somewhere even, why did I? Because my parent put me into classical arts. I grew up with reading, learning about our traditional cultures, traditional philosophy, Sanskrit literature, Hindi literature, even though I was studying in a convent school throughout. So I knew my Milton and Shakespeare as much as I knew about Kalidas and Bhas. Yeah. I knew my Pat Boone songs as much as I knew about my Ragdari system, as well as the Vivaldis and etc. So my Pat Boone and my Mohammad Rafi over here, Vivaldi and Bach and Beethoven over there, and my classical music in there. So because that was the culture at home. The first learning school is at home. What kind of atmosphere are we giving the child? I can even now sing the 11th Adhyaya, the Gita Sthane Hirishikesh Tava Prakritya Jagat Praharsha, because it was being sung at home and it was being discussed at home. Literature, Sanskrit literature, Bhagavad Gita. So let's not forget it. And outside, I was in a convent school, in an international environment. So you grow up with that balance.
Absolutely. That's definitely something that we have to think about. And I think consciously need to start understanding what we need to learn about our culture, which
exactly. And that is then reflected in our work.
Absolutely.
And how we and our approach to work and what we would like to project. Earning moolah is very good, but at the same time, you have to also learn and sort of see within yourself, where is the balance? How much of balance?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is definitely a thought that you've left us with that we're going to think about. Now, we spoke about the younger generation and how we need to kind of bring a balance for them. But, often we see that there are talented youngsters out there. And, often, like you said, because of whatever media portrayal, dances, the cultural dances are often not considered cool. And this was a discussion that we also had when the tourism of ministry had a session on, cultural heritage. One of the panelists, in fact, spoke about it. But, and they're often asked to choose between studying and picking their passion. There's never a balance between the two. So you have done both. You've done your academics, you hold so many degrees, and you've pursued your passion, and you're renowned at an international level. So what really motivated you to take on this challenge, and what are the difficulties that you faced to accomplish everything that you've accomplished?
No. See, motivation comes from within. There's no external motivation. Motivation has to come from within. And difficulties. that is also, you create the difficulties. Others don't. It is only a myth that others are creating difficulties because you perceive them to be difficult. Now, let me tell you, I loved my studies. I was passionate about my studies as I was passionate about my dance. So dance for me was my breath, but I loved my studies and I was equally ambitious in both. When I say that, I wanted to do well because my thirst for knowledge. That was the reason. Now, I'll tell you one incident which has probably molded me, shaped me, and in a way, uh, I mean, today I look back and I think that was a defining moment. At that time, I did not understand. But today, when I look back, I was probably, in my third or fourth standard at that time. And, you had your terminal examinations, etc. And I was studying for my terminal, but I was looking out there and I was looking somewhere else and somewhere. Till my mother, she came and she closed my books. I mean, I'm studying, by the way. I had an exam the next day, she closed my books and she said, "No more studying. Go and your mind is elsewhere. I keep looking at you're looking at something here and there. Do whatever you are looking at because you're not actually studying because your mind is wandering." And she said, "I'm not going to let you study because you're not studying. It is just a sham." And then I quietly, meekly got up, and then I actually wanted to dance. I was looking at, and then so I did all that, and I came back after a couple of hours, and I studied better. I studied with concentration. So that was a lesson that whatever you do, do it concentratedly with concentration and passion. Don't allow other things to come in. So that was a lesson indirectly which I learned about time management. Today I can talk in terms those terminologies of time management, but at that time I never understood all that except that yes, I have to do what I'm passionately interested, and then at that moment just be concentrated. And then I was always topper in class as well as in dance. I was always my name was everywhere. So I think that was a defining moment in my life. And therefore, and my mother never stopped me. So even when I said I'm going to become a dancer, she said, "Fine." We are not, my parents, neither my parents. Society had a problem. I'm sorry to say, society had a problem. So I said, let it be. But if you're correct, the only thing I remember my mother saying, whatever you do, never lose sight of morals and ethics. The chair doesn't give you dignity. You also impart dignity to the chair. You also impart dignity and luster to the vocation you choose. Today, X vocation is taken in X light or negative light or whatever light. So they said even in the earlier years, even going out and studying was taken in a negative light, but now today it is taken in a positive light. So anything that you do, if you do it with dignity, maintaining your ethics and values. So she says, that is my only condition. I said, only condition. Whatever you do, I will never stop you, but never lose sight of dignity, ethics, and morality.
That's a very important takeaway, I think, and something.
I know, and there was a rider to it. And whatever you do it with depth and passion. Don't skim on the surface. She always said, don't be like a bubble on the surface. Have the depth of the ocean. Go deep into the subject. You will find rasa in that.
This is really wise words. I mean, such great learnings that you had at such a young age. It's really nice, and that has, like you said, made you the person that you were, and it was a defining moment in your life. And it's definitely a takeaway for the generation of today, not just as the younger generation who's going to take over all of this later on, but also us as the present generation to kind of bring that balance in our lives so that we can do that for the future generations as well.
And society always had a problem. When
Yeah.
I was also working, they said, how can a dancer work? How can this a dancer or do MSc physics? How can a dancer do? Why is it? Why should not I? So if you're doing this, you cannot be a dancer. And the world of dance also had a problem. Sorry for the sometime. How can you do this? Because if you're so either way, because they have a certain way. So society from both ends, the this end or that end, always had a problem. But as long as you maintain it and clear, and you actually that in spite of what you are still the amongst the top ones, never letting come down, lowering your standards of whatever you're doing it,
Yeah.
and that you're giving your best output, and maintaining that. I think, and society also starts accepting it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was some great information for us to take away from this session. Now, let's also talk about your time. I'm sure you invest your time, some of it in your own dance, some that you have a lot of students under your tutelage. You take classes. In fact,
I didn't hear. I didn't get to. I lost you. I lost you. What did you say? Let's talk about.
Let's talk about your students. You have people, you are training them. In fact, you joined us right after a session with your students, I'm guessing. What is the message of the youth for today, who are constantly battling between being a global citizen and upholding tradition? Where do you think one needs to draw the line?
I'm sorry, you can be a traditionalist yet a global citizen. Where is where is the difference? Now let me take the example of Ravi Shankar. Traditionalist to the core. But wasn't he a global citizen? Look at Zakir Hussain. Traditionalist to the core, yet a global citizen. So what defines a global citizen? That you're accepted. When you say global citizen, that means you have an open mind and you're also accepted by the West. You can be a traditionalist with an open mind. Who has told you not to have an open mind? In fact, we create barriers for ourselves, mental barriers. You know that Manu Smriti, the much quoted Manu, people love to quote only a couple of phrases here and there, but they don't read the entire thing. If you read chapter 4, in one of the verses, he said that to maintain the dharma is duty, not dharma in the sense of religion, because even dharma is a much maligned word. Okay, dharma in the sense of duty. That he said there would be a time when you have to, the laws, etc. Don't, as he says, abrogate them, change them, modify them, throw them out of the window. In other words, keep changing, going with, in other words, have an open mind. Our scriptures have exhorted us to have an open mind, have discussions, question. Who stops you from having an open mind of a global citizen and yet be rooted in their culture? So, because it is, give me an example. If there is a soil which has no nourishment and there's a little plant, a tree which has no roots, firm roots, even a small gust of wind was enough to blow it away. Forget a storm and a tempest. But a tree with firm, proper roots spread is still able to take, weather all storms, and it'll flower and fruit better because it is open to the winds of change. It's taking in from everywhere. And so it is flowering and fruiting better.
That is
even our own tradition has kept on changing.
Yes.
For example, I'm wearing a nose pin. You're not, but I am. Okay. And this, I got my nose pierced only at the age of 21. After doing my MSc, Sandy said, oh, we see Bhim Singh Zaveri. And so my friend and I, we just walked inside and got our nose pierced. Now, but if you look at the old sculptures, you don't have nose pins anywhere. And we're laden with jewelry. From the head to toe, we've got jewelry on. But we don't have a nose pin on. But medieval period paintings, all of them show nose pins and nose rings. Ancient period literature does not talk about nose pins, nose ring. Medieval period literature talks about nose pins, nose ring. Tradition has changed. Today.
Very interesting way to put it across.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on from there, you've been an academician, you've done your fair bit of research, and one of those led you to discovering the 16 Kathak villages situated in eastern UP and Bihar. What led you down this path of discovery, and what do you aim to achieve through this initiative?
See, I'll answer the second part of it first. What do I want to achieve? I have not set out with a mission to that I have to achieve it, that way. For me, it's a discovery. It is learning. I am learning. So for me, it is a learning process. And in that learning process, I'd like to share my learning, what I have learned with everyone. That's it. If I go out with the achievement, I have to do this. No. I mean, that way, that is different. But the first to answer, a stray question of a journalist. Embarked me on this tour. And this was also just about 18 years ago. Of maybe, I don't remember, 2002, 3, 4, or whenever it was. I'll have to look up when was I dancing at the Bodh Gaya festival, because I keep dancing there very often, the Bodh Gaya festival. So one journalist asked me, will you be visiting the Kathak villages? My musicians and I looked at each other. We've learned from the best of Kathak gurus, but we've never heard of a Kathak village. So I first thought he was pulling my leg, like all journalists are, they like to trip you. And then as I said, I'm forthright enough. And after my initial visit, I said, are you trying to trip me? So he says, no, I'm not. There are Kathak. So he said, really? I said, I don't know about it. Can you tell me where they are? They said, yeah, it's not very far. Not very far, he said. Now, he went off because then he asked other questions. Other journalists started asking other questions. But that resonated. And that was what set me off on that tour. And I was so happy that a colleague of mine, who also, when I told her narrative, she said, hey, that sounds interesting. And so both of us, they're really armed with, and no, then in the second, we saw that I was doodling one day, and just when you're like this, so I go and I just said Kathak village in the census of India. And lo and behold, I found Kathak village in the census of India. I got up like that. I said, what? And here it is right under our noses. And then started the serious quest.
So I have to ask you, what has the discovery led to? What did you learn about these?
The discovery led to the fact to see that it is still a living tradition. That there are still Kathaks dancing in temples. Their dance is very different from what we do. Completely different. Okay, when I was watching them, I was saying, ooh, the movement could be a little more refined. My colleague says, shut up. And then, that was to begin with, because it was not so refined movements as we have it on stage, that way. So, and then after that, I got lost, completely lost we thought we'll go there and we'll see it, but there were a few very good ones. So others, okay, you got up after 10-15 minutes. But this person, instead of the 10-15 minutes that we had allotted ourselves, we sat for over 1 hour and watched and heard him. And how he improvised, how he said the Kathanak and this and danced and sang. Everything was together. The complete package. And the knowledge.
So I have to ask you now, I mean, you've seen it in the original form, or let's say closest to the original form of the actual form of Kathak. Do you think you are going to bring this into the commercial foray in some way? Maybe collaborate with
I
them?
would
Or...
not, because you see, this is a different genre that you needed. Because they're the entire, when even for us who are in this proscenium scenario, when we go and dance, say in front of an altar, we change. When we are dancing on a proscenium, there's a difference. A slide, you won't notice it, but we notice it. The repertoire also changes a bit. It's the same repertoire, but there will be a certain emphasis more if I'm dancing in Vrindavan, in front of the deity. When I'm dancing in Sankat Mochan, in front of the deity. Even when I was dancing in Khajuraho inside, I got that opportunity to dance inside Kandarya Mahadev. And when I was dancing over there, different feeling, completely different feeling. When you're dancing inside in front of the deity, where you have nothing else, the other pilgrims are, bhakts are there. But that is imitative. You're only dancing for the Lord. It's a completely different experience.
So the only downside of actually doing this on Zoom is probably having to listen to vegetable vendors in the background, and I do apologize for it, but that is something that I cannot control. Okay, so now I'm practically done with all the questions that I had for you, but I have just 5 questions, which we'll take it as a rapid fire. So here we go. Your most cherished possession, which reminds you of your journey as a dancer.
Ghungroos.
Your most memorable performance till date?
There are several.
Okay. Favorite dance form apart from Kathak?
All of them.
All of them. Okay.
Because you see, each dance form has its such a special beauty. Bharatanatyam is as beautiful as an Odissi, as beautiful as a Chow, as beautiful as a Satriya, as beautiful as a Kathakali, as beautiful as the Western classical ballet or the Spanish flamenco. They're also beautiful.
I agree. I think it's very
because that each one it has something unique about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. One mantra you follow in life?
Huh?
One mantra
what?
You follow in life?
Be true to whatever you do. I'm honest and true in whatever I do. Whether it's in my feelings, whether it is my work, and my feelings show in my work. My passion shows in my work. The honesty shows in the work. The morality, ethics show in the work. And in your being.
My final question is, Shobana, the dancer, the student, or the guru?
A person who's just a devotee of God through the medium of dance, through the medium of Saraswati, which encompasses all. I'm just a devotee, a pujari.
Amazing, Shobana-ji. It's been so much fun having you on, on this session, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm sure our audience have also enjoyed seeing you and hearing you. And we've had so many valuable takeaways from this session. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to take questions because we're already an hour into it, but I think we have a lot to think about what you have said. And thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. You've brightened up our Wednesday morning with your wisdom and your charm. And we hope to see you again soon. And I hope that you get to take some rest now after the long, early start to your day.
Even anything in the field of, Saraswati is for me is my rest.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Shobnaji. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. Please do not forget to fill out the polls. Please stay safe and take care. We'll see you next Wednesday for another exciting session. Thank you, Shobnaji. Thank you,
Thank you.
to all the audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.